Okay, I wanted to remind everyone that when you guys download your notes from Google Classroom, it's always going to ask you to make a copy. When you make that copy, make sure you move it into your geometry folder. You can either do that by pressing File, and come down here to Move, or you can use this little file button up here that says Move, put it in your geometry notebook. Second thing I wanted to remind you of, once you have that done, to open it up in Cami, you right click, open with, annotate with Cami. It may or may not make you sign in, that's okay. Just wait, it'll eventually open here and load. Okay, our do now for the day is factor this quadratic. Well, in order to factor this, it has to equal 0, so I'm going to have to move the 68 over here. So this side is 0, so I'm going to get 4n squared minus n minus 68 equals 0. So this one becomes a little tougher because we're going to have to multiply 4 times negative 68. We're going to get this number, negative 272. Okay, so your Algebra 1 teacher told you to do this in a cross, negative 272, and then this would be negative 1. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply together to give you negative 272. But those same two numbers add together to equal negative 1. Well, if we go through and we think about all the multiples of negative 272, we get negative 17 times 16. Negative 17 times 16 is negative 272. And negative 17 plus 16 is negative 1. So you put those factors over here. Now, the one thing that you're supposed to do next is, because the a is equal to 4 and it's not equal to 1, we take that a and we divide both of these fractions by 4. Well, this first fraction doesn't reduce. The bottom number gets the variable, which is n. So the way we write our factor from this is 4n minus 17. That's our first factor. This fraction over here does reduce. This is actually going to reduce to 4 over 1. So after it reduces, we use the reduced version so that the bottom number gets the n. So that's 1n plus 4 equals 0. This is called factored form. These are your factors. For each one now we have to solve. So 4n minus 17 equals 0. Add 17 to both sides. We get 4n equals 17. Divide both sides by 4, and we get n equals 17 over 4. Then we do the same thing over here. N plus 4 equals 0. Subtract 4 from both sides, and we get n equals negative 4. So if you're really trying to impress your algebra teacher, you put it in little squiggly brackets. Negative 4 is smaller, so it goes first. And you got 17 over 4 goes second. Those are your two answers. If I plug those answers in, it would work. Or if I graphed this quadratic and I looked where it crossed the x-axis, then you would get those two answers. Okay, if you didn't finish up your notes from Thursday and you are not in the Google Meet today, feel free to go look at Thursday's video. I've already uploaded it last week on the Thursday section of Google Classroom. So let's talk about fractional distance. So there is a midpoint formula, but we talked about there's a different way to find the midpoint. So first thing I can do is just guess. I think the midpoint's going to be right here at 1, negative 2. Okay? So the reason why I know that's my guess, right? Well, let's back up our laws. Well, we talked about yesterday that we're going from negative 2 to 4 on the x's. So that's this value right here. If we take those, if we find the distance and the x's and we take them, we subtract them, we get 4 minus -2, which actually is 6. Okay, and if we do the same thing with the y values, which we're going from 1 to 3, the distance on the y's is 3 minus 1 or 1 minus 3, which is 2. Well, that means I traveled a distance on the x-axis. I traveled 6 units this way, and I traveled 2 units up. Well, think about this in the standpoint of midpoint. I don't want to travel 6 over and 2 up. How many do I want to travel over? 3. So I'm going to half the distances, and half of the dy equals 1. And then I'm just going to count. So 1, 2, so 1, 2, so I'm just going to count. 1, 2, 3, and then up 1. Okay, 3, 1, and I got to this spot. Okay, so my midpoint, and we can say from A to B if we want, whatever we want to put on there, is equal to 1 comma -2. Now, just take special note that the graph is by halves. That's the scale. Okay, so fractional distance, but instead of half, I want it 1/4 of the way. Well, let's kind of keep with the same thing. We're going from B to A. So we want to go from B to A. Well, horizontally, how far is this? And how far down is this? So we can do it 2 different ways. A is at 3, 1, and B is at -5, 5. So let's use the x values. Okay, let's find the distance between the x's. That's going to be -5 minus 3, which is +8. So we know this distance right here is 8. Okay, let's go and look at how far down we travel. We can use 5 and 1 because that's our y values. And hopefully you remember us doing this last week. So the distance on the y's is 5 minus 1 or 1 minus 5. And I get 4. Okay, well, what do I want to do? I need half of dx, which is 4, and half of the distance on the y-axis, which is 2. And then we can just take this and we can count, or we can add. So I'm starting at B. I'm going to go over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And down 2. 1, 2. Well, that gets us halfway. But if I read this, it wants 1/4 of the way. So instead of multiplying the distance, the x value, and the distance of the y's by half, what could I multiply by? Oh, let's multiply by 1/4. Good. So now, what's 1/4 of 8? 8 divided by 4 is 2. What's 1/4 of 4? 1. So instead, we're going to go over 2 and down 1. Here's my answer. Now, you have to be very careful. So -3, 4. You have to be very careful because this says from B to A. If it said from A to B, it would be a completely different problem because we'd have to go from A to B the opposite way. Okay, so let's try 2/3 the distance. Okay, so let's just think about this. We're going from D to M. So we're going from D all the way to M. How far over do I travel? 9. How far travel down? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, okay? And I want 2/3 of 9, which is 6. And I want 2/3 of 6, which is 4. Now we just take these and we count or we add them. So 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. And my answer is 4, comma 1. Now I'd ask you to pause the video and try guided practice number 2. Okay, so we want to go from D to M, so we're going to go backwards. We still need our distances, so it doesn't matter. We're going from D to M. So over and up. Okay. So we're starting at D. We still travel. We're here at 3, and we're going all the way to -5. 3 minus -5 is 8. And then we're starting down here, -8, and we're going all the way up to +8, so that's 16. So I only want to go 3/8 the distance. So I want 3/8 of 8, which is 3. And I need 3/8 of 16, which is 6. Now we're going to count on this one, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to count up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my answer is 0, comma, -2. Now, if I didn't have a graph available for me, okay, I'm going from D. So I'm going from 3 to -5, which means to get from 3 to -5, I'm going in the negative direction on a number line. So if I'm starting at 3 and I need to go travel a distance of 3, to get from 3 to -5, I'm going negatively, so I'm going to have to subtract 3. 3 minus 3 is 0. That's how I got the x coordinate. Now I'm traveling 6. Well, I'm going from -8 to +8, which means I'm going in a positive direction, so we're going to add. So it's -8 plus 6. That's -2. And that was our answer. So if you don't have a graph, you can always just use your coordinates and add or subtract depending on which way you're moving on the number line.